I don't know where to sit because like it's really dark over here. I don't know the light.
Can you hear me and see me okay, everyone?
Yep.
Great. Okay. We'll just give it another minute and let people join in who would like to join in, and then we'll get started.
Hello.
Okay.
I can hear myself.
We can hear you, Joy.
Yeah. You're good, Joy. I think we can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So welcome everyone to our second panel session this morning, and the second one of On the Field. And during this panel, we are going to be hearing from athlete experiences. And in particular, we are going to start with hearing from Joy SpearChief-Morris, who's an elite athlete in track and field, and former Paralympian and volunteer coach Darda Sales. All of these women bring to us tremendous experiences, and we are going to start with having each of them speak to some of the questions on why and how they continue to do the roles that they play, or other things that have been inspirational for them in their lives as they've been preparing for the events that they prepared for in their athletic careers. And then after they each speak for a few minutes, we will have a Q&A at the end, and we'll be using the chat function again for that. Are you good, Joy? Can you hear us okay? Right? So Joy, I'm going to start with you. If you're working okay there, I think you're in. So can you start by telling us, are you hearing me, Joy? Yes?
I literally just got sound now, sorry. So I haven't heard anything up until this moment.
That's okay. I just did a general interview, Joy. not an overview of that. You're going to be talking about 5 minutes each of you from your experiences about why and how you continue to do what you do and the roles that you play. But you can speak to anything in particular that you would like most to speak to first. And Joy, you are the one that I have up first, if that's okay. Would you like to start for us? If you don't, we can start with someone else. That's okay.
Let's start with someone else.
All right?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Caroline,
Perfect.
would you like to talk about what perhaps has been your greatest source of inspiration to date, or anything else that has played a significant role in why you continue to do what you do and
Sure.
how you continue?
Absolutely. So
Great.
I'll start with why I continued with the sport post-collegiately. So I was fortunate to have a lot of success when I was in high school. As a high school athlete, I made a couple national teams. I broke the Canadian high school record. But when I moved on to university, I kind of plateaued in terms of my progression, and I didn't really progress the way that I hoped throughout university. This was really hard for me because as a high school kid, like because of the success that I saw, I just kind of assumed that when you work hard, no matter what, you're going to progress, you're going to continue to reach your goals. I never really had to be patient. So I kind of struggled throughout my first few years of university with just kind of feeling stuck, feeling like I wasn't going anywhere. And I didn't really start to see improvement until I was in my 5th and final year of university. So for me, it was kind of an easy decision that I was going to continue with the sport after university, because I had only really started to improve at that point, and I knew that there was still more in me. And that's a decision that I'm really glad that I made, because post-collegiately, I have made a ton of progress. I think throughout my 1st and 4th year of university, I improved like 10 centimeters. And in the 5 years that I've been a post-collegiate athlete, I've improved 70, I think, if my math is right. And I know that there's still more in me. So it was kind of like a no-brainer for me that I was going to continue, as long as this was still something that I enjoyed, something that was still possible for me financially. It's something that I wanted to continue to pursue, just because I still wasn't at the point that I wanted to be at, and it was still possible for me. So that's why I continued with it. I suppose as an athlete in an individual sport, it was maybe a little bit easier for me to make that decision to continue. I imagine when you're a team sport athlete, you kind of have to be in a certain place training with certain people. Whereas for me, I was really happy with living in London, Ontario, and my coaches that I had throughout university. So I knew that I just wanted to stay put and kind of continue doing the same thing, except this time not in school. And I realized pretty early into my post-collegiate career that I was a lot better at being a student athlete than I was at being an athlete human trying to support myself. Because as a student, I was really passionate about doing my best and I wanted to do well. But when I was working, once I graduated, I kind of just saw my jobs that I had at the time as like means to an end. Like I was just trying to support myself so I could do what I really wanted to do. And I struggled with that because I just wanted to do the sport. I didn't want to have to worry about finances and stuff, but that's obviously just a reality that a lot of people face as unfunded athletes. And that first year post-collegiately was definitely my hardest year of my career, because it was just such a learning curve. At one point I was working 3 different jobs. I was sleeping in my car on lunch breaks, just like trying to get a 20-minute nap before heading straight to practice. And I remember some days I would just be crying from fatigue while driving straight to practice, because I'm like, I'm so tired of this. Like if I just had a little bit of funding, it would change my life. Like it wouldn't have to be this hard all the time. But I found my groove, and in the midst of that really, really challenging first year as a post-collegiate athlete, I did have a huge improvement. And that's when I realized how much more satisfying it is when it is hard, and knowing that, you made all these sacrifices, you did this all on your own. And that kind of set the stage for the next few years, and made me realize that it's not going to be easy, and it doesn't have to be. And it definitely makes it more worth it. Been talking for a while now. I hope it hasn't been more than 5 minutes, but
No, you're fine.
Okay, cool. So that was definitely my biggest challenge, the financial side of things as an unfunded athlete. And I'm really, really fortunate now. Earlier this year, my husband and I made the decision to not work this year and kind of go all in this Olympic year and just give it everything we have. So the experience finally of being like a full-time athlete has just been amazing, just to be able to focus all day, every day on, the goal at hand. And we are fortunate to have some sponsorship from a company in our hometown of London, Ontario, that's helping cover a lot of our major training expenses this year. So I'm actually in Santa Barbara, California right now, in the middle of a 2-month training camp and doing some competitions down here. And something like this would not be possible as an unfunded athlete. So we're just really grateful to have the support of generous people in our community. And that's how a lot of unfunded athletes survive, for sure.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Yeah.
We're going to come back, and we have a session, as I mentioned, afterwards in the chat for questions for you individually, but I also have some other ones which I'll come back to you with as well. Joy, are you up for going next and chatting now? Yeah? Okay, good. So Joy, please tell us some of your story.
Yeah, so my trajectory into why I continued in sports after university is a little bit different from Caroline's, even though we overlapped by about 2 years. Caroline used to be my roommate when I lived in London, when I actually first got to London. So I have been a student athlete my entire life, from like middle school all the way up through high school and then through university. And I had like a forward trajectory with track. From my first year to my 5th year, I just continuously got better and saw results and saw results. So it made the most sense for me to continue after. I never felt like I was done. Like I didn't think I was like going to be 5 years and that's it. I'd only ever known how to be a student athlete. So for me, it made the most sense to be like, okay, well, we got 4 years until Tokyo. Let's give this Tokyo Olympics a try. And I think I could do it because I've been getting better every year. And I kind of went into it a little bit naively in that sense. After my first year, I actually moved to Santa Barbara, California, in attempts to get out of London. I just thought that to be a athlete training for the Olympics, that you needed to go where the best resources were. So I knew that some of the best hurdlers were in the States. So I went to the States, and I was going to live that, full-time athlete life. And I realized very quickly that that was not what I was supposed to do. I was extremely unhappy. I was working 2 jobs and then 1 job after I got fired from a restaurant as a nanny. And I was making no money. I had no funding. And I was paying an extraordinary amount to train and to live. And I couldn't make ends meet. I was unhappy. I plateaued. Like I had the worst results I'd ever had in like my entire, like worse than I'd ever performed in like my first or second years of university. Yeah, it was just a really rough year, and I couldn't do it. I didn't think I could do it, but I knew I wanted to continue. So I ended up leaving, and I came back to London, where I actually was, I was like, well, I did live in London, might as well go back to London. And that was one of the best decisions I made. I started training again, and immediately my results started going back up. I was happier. And I think I just found that I needed to have some sort of balance. So like I wasn't in school anymore, so I needed to have something else that was fulfilling. So I started working at the university, and I'm still working there. I've transitioned into a full-time role. I went back to grad school. I got a master's degree, all of this while training, and my results have just continuously got better. I think it was a matter for me of finding what works. Like for me, I was successful having a balanced life, and I needed to find that balance again in some sort of way. So whether that was through work or school or through just some sort of life that felt that way, that track wasn't my end all be all anymore. I actually did better. I actually do better in sport, knowing that it's not my only thing in life. And a lot of more doors have opened up for me in that way. I've actually had opportunities to participate in sport on different boards. I was part of Athletes Can for a year. the board of directors. I sat on the Athletics Canada Athletes Council for a year. I'm actually back at Athletes Can on their Equity and Diversity Committee. And I've been involved in just different ways with work and doing the Indigenous Track and Field Day that we have with the Western team, helping lead that. And it's been rewarding to find other ways to be involved with sport while still competing and still, you know, like Caroline said, like making a living, because you have to be able to live to compete. And it is the hard part of being an unfunded athlete, is that you have to figure out how to make it work. And so I think I've done the best I can to make this work and be achievable for me.
Thank you for that, Joy. Such important lessons about the need to be happy in what you're doing and be able to survive with those kinds of conditions and training. You need to have that support and that happiness. Darda Sales, you have such an accomplished record as a Paralympian and then now as a coach. Would you share with us some of the challenges and some of the greatest sources of inspiration, or any of the important things that you think that you would like to tell from your story?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's really interesting listening to both these ladies talk, because there's just pieces that I tie to my story. Through my university career, I completely plateaued. Those were a rough 4 years. Like, I literally did not improve 1 second in my best events when I was swimming. And I actually took a year off to do a postgraduate program. And it was when I had moved to Orillia. I was doing a postgraduate program out of Georgian College, and the local swim coach there found out I was in town and asked if I wanted to try coaching. And at that point, I had never coached at all. And so I had no idea what I was doing. And she's like, no, it's great. You know how you know what you're doing. Come on out. And two things happened. One, I found out I absolutely love to coach. I love being around the athletes. I love seeing them improve. I love making the personal connections with them. And then the second part was that my love for the sport came back because of my time with them. I was so frustrated after those 4 years of no improvement. And here I was hanging out with these like 11-year-olds who I like had to hold back from jumping in the pool for practice and stuff. They just love to swim. And I just realized that that's what it's actually about. It's not about anything else other than the love of what you're doing. And so hanging out with them really instilled that in me. And so I actually got back in the pool and had some of the best results I'd ever had in the next 4 years after that. And it was amazing. Unfortunately, my story continues that I injuried out of the pool, could no longer train to the level that I needed to. And so I started playing wheelchair basketball as what was supposed to be my retirement sport, like that thing that like keeps you active and keeps you off the couch. And that's where it started from. But my competitive drive was still there, and I love to train. I am one of those weirdos. I love nothing better than when you get to the end of a practice and you have nothing left. I love that feeling. And so when people started saying like, hey, like you could transition to wheelchair basketball and this could be a thing. And I was like, oh, all right, let's give it a try. But at this point, I had 3 kids. And so I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but I had some really amazing support around me that made it possible for me to be a mom and to train. And I was still coaching swimming a little bit on the side as well, and trying to do it all. And none of that would have been possible without the supports that I had around me. I had coaches around me that believed in me, that this was something that I could do. I had a family that was willing to step up and let me have those hours to train. I think my family realized what a important piece for my mental health, being an athlete and being physically active, really is for me. I am honestly miserable when I'm not doing some form of physical activity, and my family recognized that and were able to support me in being able to continue to do that. I also had a sports program around me. Wheelchair Basketball Canada at that point was super supportive of the fact that I had these requirements as a mother, and they were willing to work around them and to support me in making that happen. And so due to that, I was able to wear so many hats, and I did that for 4 years. And it was amazing. And I think that it's so important for where I'm heading now. And it also is such an amazing thing for my daughters to see that you can do these things. Yes, you need supports. Yes, you need the financing, of course. But if you truly have a passion for something in life, you can find a way. And I'm hoping that through my experiences, that instills that in my daughters, and also the young teenage women that I coach now. I want them to see that whatever they chase is possible, and that some of the things that I think we see as barriers are not necessarily barriers. Sometimes they're jumping off points. And that it's about how we look at them, how we frame our attitudes around them, and how we look for solutions.
Some really great lessons there, Darda, about reinventing. Allison has commented here a very interesting story about reinventing yourself, those jumping off points, and staying in sports. Now we can have questions in the chat and let people think about questions they might want to ask. In the meantime, I wanted to ask each of you, if you could share one of the most important lessons you have learned in your career involvement so far, what would it be? And I'll start with you, Caroline.
Sure. There's so many. I could write a book, really. But
You should write a book.
I think the main one is definitely something that I'm continuing to learn throughout the years, but just how much what you go through off of the track can actually help you on the track. So like so many things like grit and like patience and determination that like you can't necessarily learn, that you kind of have to like go through something for those traits to kind of be instilled in you. And this has been like really, really important for me, because there's been a lot of things that I've been through in my life that, have kind of just made me feel like, oh, like someone like me, like I'm trying to break the Canadian record right now, like someone like me, I don't have funding. I've lost both of my parents and I've been through some really hard times. How can someone like me do something that no one has ever done before? But I've kind of shifted my thinking over these past few years, and I'm like, so many of these things that I've been through have made me into the person that I am, and that person is capable of doing these things, and I can accomplish my goals not despite these things that I've been through, but because of them. And when I do accomplish my goals, I'm going to know that it is because of what I've persevered through and the person that I am. And I think that's been a huge lesson for me, just a huge shift in my thinking.
Thank you for that, Caroline. Joy, would you like to share with us what was one of the most important lessons that you've learned in your career involvement so far?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been about kind of knowing that, like, why are we doing this? Like, why, like, all of us had the decision, after university to just, call it quits, go on and be a real adult and have full-time jobs and all that sort of stuff that people do. But we're still in this sport, and so I think it's really kind of like asking yourself, like, why do I want to do this? And that's a question I've had to ask myself several times over the last however many years it's been since I've graduated, about why I want to keep going. And originally it's because, like, oh, I'm not ready to be done an athlete, I think I can do this. And that's changed into being like, I want to have that success, I know I can do it, to even being like, and especially like this, I think this past year has been the hardest for me to really figure out that, why am I doing this? Like, everything's been shut down. I haven't seen a real full size track in over a year. Like, why am I still doing this? Like, what's the point? And it's really kind of like, what would it mean to me? And I've come all this way, and knowing that there's a reason why I've done this, and I need to see it all the way through. And also for all the people who have been there along the way, like my family and my coaches and all the sports, my friends, and even just, like people who look up to you on social media, or, those one-off direct messages or emails you get about, you've inspired my child to keep going. Like, those are the reasons that I keep going. And it's definitely has not been easy. It hasn't been an easy couple of years, but it has made the purpose of why you do it like the reason to keep going. So I think that's really important, is understanding why. Because if you don't have that why, then why are you, like, you're not gonna last long.
Thank you for that, Joy. Darda, would you share with us what you think might be one of the most important lessons you've learned?
Yeah, sport has taught me that I am so much stronger than I ever thought I could be. Sport has brought me to the highest highs. I'm fortunate to stand on a podium and hear the national anthem, and it has taken me to the lowest lows and everything in between. And without that journey, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be able to face the things that I continue to face. I take things on that other people see as crazy, and I have been since I was a kid and first thought that I wanted to go to the Paralympic Games. And doing the crazy things takes a lot of heart. It takes a lot of time and passion and sweat and tears. And at the end of the day, regardless of what the outcome of what I do is, I will be a better person and I will be stronger for it. And yes, you can find these things other places, but sport, it's just right there. And you open yourself up to the risks because you know what the awards could be. And we chase those, but we ultimately come away as better people. And I think we're stronger physically, but also mentally. Like, I have been low in this area, but it's brought me back, and it hasn't crushed me. And I think that I'm so grateful to sport for that, because it does influence everything else that I'm doing now as a coach, as a PhD candidate, as a mother, as a consultant, all these things. It all spills over. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunity that sport has given me. So even though I will say in the moments when you're at the bottom, it's absolutely terrible. But when you look back on it, you realize how far you've come.
Thank you for that, Darda. I see that we have a question in our chat box here from Maria Carrillo. How did you deal with returning to training and competition post-injury? Does anyone want to speak to that first? Okay, Joy.
Yeah, I think all of us can kind of say is that, like, it's not easy to come back, because I think what happens is after you're injured, and even when you're healthy, you always have that kind of doubt of being like, oh, like, okay, well, you know, like, am I gonna be okay if I go into the blocks, and am I gonna be able to, am I gonna do it, am I gonna fall, and what's gonna happen? So I think a lot of it is kind of how you prepare yourself while being injured, and then kind of coming out, like, you know, that, like, I know that I have a whole team that's going to take care of me physically, and then I have a team that's going to help me with mentally preparing to come back. And I think a lot of it is just, you know, doing the best that you can to make yourself feel good, and know that you've done all the work already, like all the skills are there, and that, you know, taking what steps you need to feel healthy, to feel confident, to feel, you know, your best, whether that is in any way, if it's, you know, cross training more, or doing more visualization or mental work, or even just like leaning on the people that are your support system. I think all those are helpful in coming back from injury. So.
Thank you for that, Joy. Do either Darda or Caroline want to speak to that as well? If not, we got other questions too.
I think Joy nailed that. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we have a question from Rachel Radu. How has the pandemic and postponement of the Tokyo Olympics affected your training, mindset, preparation for the games? So Caroline, do you want to have a go at that?
It has affected training more than anything. Like, it hasn't really affected my mindset. Last year, pretty quickly into, you know, the Olympics being canceled, I told myself, I'm like, well, I'm not training for the Olympics just because I want to go to the Olympics. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but at the end of the day, like, that is one track meet, pretty big one, albeit, in my entire career. I'm doing this because I enjoy the process of trying to be an Olympian and this journey. So it the games being canceled honestly didn't change anything for me there. Like, I knew that I wanted to keep going. I knew that I was still going to wake up the next day and train really hard, even if it meant doing it in my backyard in like 15 meters worth of space. But what was really challenging was the whole facility issue that people around the world were facing. And it was a little bit easier knowing that we were all in the same boat. But you find ways to make it work. And it's been really interesting and kind of fun at times, actually. It's been like a fun adventure trying to make it work. And, you know, it just makes you extra grateful when you are able to be back on like a normal track or back in a normal sand pit. So you just had to be adaptable and find ways to make it work.
Thank you, Caroline. Darda, do you want to speak to how the pandemic has made an impact on parasport and parasport opportunities?
Yeah, I can honestly say that I think that it's unfortunately had quite a negative impact, especially for parasport at the grassroots levels. I mean, grassroots sport got shut down regardless. I just think that unfortunately what's happened with the reopening is that parasport has kind of got pushed to the side in under the guise of safety for these athletes, which is definitely something to consider, but it's not a reason to shut them out. And so I think that unfortunately we've seen a bit of that. I think that we've also seen athletes taking it upon themselves. Those that truly want to do something in it are, and unfortunately those that were kind of on the fence, I think we'll have a hard time getting them back. So my hope is that I'm wrong. But I think that the grassroots level in parasport will have a lot of growing to do. And hopefully, you know, in some ways, I'm hoping that the pandemic has given people time to think, change their approaches, and be even more inclusive moving forward. And if that happens, then we will see the rebound. That's what I'm hoping for.
Thank you, Darda. Joy, I see there's a specific question for you from a fellow Albertan, Sarah Mattiello. Congratulations on finishing your master's first, from Sarah. And then the question is, post-Olympics, where do you see yourself working, or what projects or causes do you see yourself working on?
Yeah, so thank you. I have a master's degree in political science and transitional justice, which I thought originally I was going to use to go into public administration and policy, and that changed. So I've actually am pursuing a career in journalism, and I've always been very passionate about Indigenous issues in Canada, and also Black issues in Canada. And I would really like my work after the Olympics and after sport to really look at how I can help make a difference in those areas in Canada as a whole, whether that is through, you know, sharing stories of change, or, you know, lifting up grassroots movements, or being that voice that needs to be heard, or telling other people, or sharing other people's voices. And that's really what I'm looking forward to doing. And if I find spots to do that along the way in sport, you know, through other avenues, then that's a plus. So, yeah.
Thank you, Joy. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and once again, we still have some great questions that are still outstanding that perhaps we can do in the networking sessions individually. But I'd like to thank you at this time, Caroline, Darda, and Joy, for sharing your stories and sharing your experiences. They are so inspirational and so helpful for many, and we really appreciate you coming here today and doing that. So now we exit this particular session, and the next session is going to be panel number 3, which Alison Doherty will be moderating, and it's going to be off the field topics. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next session. Thanks, gals.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.